If you love something and you're passionate about something, you should share with people because you never know
You never
who
know.
they're going to know or who they're going to run into or be able to refer you to.
Welcome everyone to the Tech Guide podcast, where we give actual advice to those wanting to break into tech or are looking for their next gig. We have Freund on the podcast today, who's a social media manager at Canva, but also has experience at Taco Bell, Studio 71, and Shutterfly. I'm so excited to have her on. Welcome, Lauren, to the podcast. So excited to have you.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, you are going to be great. And before we dive into your professional experience, let's talk about what you like to do personally to kind of set the stage here. You're in San Diego. I love San Diego.
Love to hear
so
that.
I'm curious, what are like 2 things that you have to do like each week in San Diego?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm a big beach girl, and I know we haven't had the right weather recently, but still, even when it's rainy or cold, I'm at the beach. I love hiking there or just grabbing a coffee and walking there before my meetings start. I'm a big beach gal. I have to hit up our beaches. I think La Jolla beaches are the best. And then second thing, I mean, kind of goes hand in hand, but you got to do a little taco tour while you're down in San Diego.
Ooh.
Got the best tacos here. I'm currently on the hunt for the best taco. I've got a few in like my top 5, but definitely on a little taco tour down while you're in San Diego, and then take it to the beach and you've got your perfect San Diego day.
I would say that sounds like the perfect day in general. If you have tacos and you're on the beach, I don't know if you could ask for a better day.
Exactly. Yeah. Just some sunshine, which we're getting right now, which is awesome.
Yeah. You kind of stabbed me in the heart there a little bit, though, because I'm in Austin, Texas, and I swear that
Wow,
Austin
okay.
has the best tacos in the world. But I have actually heard San Diego has better tacos, but I say Austin's better, but that's funny.
To be fair, I haven't been to Austin yet, so I'm going to have to go and try the tacos over there.
Yes. Next time in San Diego, I'm definitely going to do the taco tour because breakfast tacos are like my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
But let's talk about professional. We kind of set the stage there. What do you like to do personally? Beach, tacos. But let's talk about your professional life, which you have done a lot of great things already. You had a few internships in college with companies like Studio 71 as a brand partner. You then moved to Taco Bell as a social and digital experience coordinator. Let's kind of rewind back the clock a little bit and how you got a job at Taco Bell, which I know on social media is one of the coolest companies on social media. So talk to me about this process about finding the job at Taco Bell.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent, as you can see from my resume, I spent a lot of my later high school years and then all of college doing internships in the marketing field, everywhere from social media to PR to earned media. Marketing is such a huge umbrella. And when I was getting my degree for public relations and advertising, and there's so many different roles that fall under those categories. So
Yeah.
I really wanted to take my time while I was in school and had the time to explore those different avenues, do internships that lasted, half a year or even just a summer to get a taste of it, see what I liked, what I didn't like, my strengths. So from doing all of that, I really loved the social media space. It could be that I'm biased and I grew up with it and it comes as kind of a second nature. But I do also find it, especially in the corporate field, to be somewhat of a challenge. I think everyone my age and younger knows how to use social media for their own personal brand. But I think it gets a little more, I don't want to say complicated, but a little more tricky maybe to be on social media as a corporate brand and how you're going to connect with people as not a person, like you're a company, you're an entity. So that challenge really excited me. And when I was looking at jobs, when I was about to graduate, I saw that someone who worked at Taco Bell had also worked at a company that I had previously interned for. So this is what I tell people all the time is like, find those connections. So I found her and I wanted to just ask her, how is Taco Bell compared to this other company that we both worked at? Because now we both have that same comparison. How is the structure laid out? Things like that. So she was very, very kind. I had reached out to her about a different role and she kind of gave me the lowdown of like, hey, it's a bit above recent graduate. However, I know this other role that's about to come onto LinkedIn. So I kind of got the inside scoop, which is super helpful and why I always tell people, reach out to any connections that you may have. Because you never know what they're going to know. So she told me about that role. It came onto LinkedIn like a few days later. And I applied for it. She referred me to it. Went through the interview process. One of the questions was, what is your favorite Taco Bell menu item? And yeah, I was lucky enough to get the role, which was really, really exciting. And it was an amazing first job right out of college because, as you can see from all the marketing Taco Bell does, they touch so many different avenues. There's always something going on. And being in social was really in the middle of all of, and I say this with love, all the craziness and all the chaos of activations and social and influencers and things like that. So it was an amazing first role.
Yeah, that sounds like a really cool first role. I'm curious, what was your favorite Taco Bell menu item?
I think at the time I said Doritos Locos Tacos, but after working there for 3 years, I definitely liked the Crunchwrap probably the best.
Yes.
So my answer kind of evolved over time.
I love that. And so I want to hit on a point that you talked about there about the challenges between corporate social media versus like a personal branding social media. People that are probably interested in going to social media are probably building a personal brand on the side, or they're very familiar with it, where you can kind of post whatever you want because it's your personality. But when you get to a corporate company, it's a lot different. So can you talk about that a little bit more? Like, why is it such a challenge once you go into a corporate company to lead their social media?
Yeah, I think because when you're doing your own, you know yourself better than anyone. You know how you speak, you know what you want to post about. And you also, as weird as it is to think about, like, you know your brand voice, and you can also evolve as you want. Like, we all evolve as people, and we might start posting different things or speaking in different ways. But when you're working for a company, it's like one big team. And everyone has to be aligned, and you're always laddering up to what the company's objectives are and how you want to come across to your audience. Because in a way, you're not building a brand firsthand from yourself. You're kind of building, I don't know why this comes to mind, but you're kind of building this Frankenstein of like, what is this person going to be like? Like, how are they going to speak? So I think that's a little tricky. And it's always a little tricky when you have to, go through approvals and everyone has to agree on something versus just yourself. But I think it's more creatively challenging and therefore more fun personally for me. Because you kind of have these different codes to crack or like puzzles to put together of like, how are we going to best reach our audience? One of the best things that Taco Bell taught me while I was there is this phrase when thinking about posting on social, which is why share, why care? So why are we sharing this content? How is it laddering up to any company objectives or goals? And then the why care part is, how are we going to share this in a way that people are going to care about or people are going to interact with? Because if you have this long list of goals for your company of, we, need higher revenue or we need more signups or whatever it may be, that's great. You could post about it, but like, why are people going to care? And to the flip side, you could post about things that people are going to care about, which a lot of companies do. Like, there are really fun companies like Duolingo and sorts who just post funny stuff. Yeah, exactly. But then you still, if you're working for a company and you're trying to promote the company and contribute to marketing goals, you still have to have that, why are you sharing part? How is this laddering up? So I think it's just like a balance that I've learned and that I take with me to all of the companies that I have to, create content for. Yeah,
I think that's really interesting because so it sounds like the care part comes from what are the metrics that we're trying to hit here? Is it higher revenue? And then is it then crafting like the message to like support that? Or like, can you kind of take me through that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the why care part is really how you're going to connect with people. There's so much noise on social. And so it's really about learning your audience, because if you know that your audience is really young and maybe like silly, fun videos, then totally go like Duolingo route and that. But if you learn that your audience is maybe not like that and maybe they like different things, for example, on Canva, we learned that our audience really loves like tips and hacks and really like quick things like that. It's always fun to be fun on social, but we found that our audiences really appreciate when we're updating them ASAP on new features or new products, or we're showing them like a really quick 15-second hack or that they can use one of our tools for. So I really think it's about learning your audience and finding a way to best connect with them of like, hey, we've got this cool thing. How are we going to say it, speak to it, post it in a way that we know they're going to care about?
a question that comes to mind for me is because social media, I mean, you're working with brands that have like thousands, like millions of followers and stuff. So I'm curious, like, let's just say like you're drafting like a post or something to go out, like a tips and tricks one. How do you balance like getting basically like too many cooks in the kitchen, like too much feedback on a post, but also like getting enough where like it's like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, great question. And I've dealt with that a lot in my career. Specifically at Canva, one of the reasons that I love working there so much is because the people who are hired on my team and also on the creative team are very, very good at their job. And, and another layer to that is, you know, when you hire people who are really good at their job, something that comes with that is trust and knowing that these people, you know, people on the social team know social and they're experts in it. And the people on the creative team are experts in that. And they know how to create this engaging, beautiful content. And so that's something that I've found unique to Canva is there's a lot of trust there. And I think that helps not too many cooks in the kitchen because we trust one another and we know that the people who are in the room are there for a reason and that they can carry this all the way to the posting live stage. And I think it's also about education. Like when we when we help new teams who want their content or their goals to be on social for us to create content to help them. There's definitely this education that we go through of them of like, here's our social strategy. This is what works for us. This is what our audience looks like. So then when we're creating content, we're posting content, they know that that is what works or that's what data has shown, because it is a bit jarring. And I can understand when, you know, people are like, I don't know if we should post that when they don't understand the social space. So I think it's definitely a lot of education that is on us to give to these other teams when they trust us in posting their content, whether it be on a certain product or a certain initiative. We have to tell them, you know, like we know social and we have to show them like, here's our strategy and here's how your objectives are going to fit into our strategy.
Yeah. And I really like that you take the point of like data, like here's like the data to support like what we're doing. Like we know our audience best and then making content based on that. And you said at the very end, then it's going back to their objectives, like basically that like why care, why share type thing. So I think that's a really interesting framework for people to take on when you are trying to convince people to post on social media is to support it with a lot of data.
Exactly. And that was something actually way back when I was at Taco Bell. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of talented people at Taco Bell, especially in the creative space. Like the creative stuff Taco Bell comes up with is incredible. And on social specifically, we're putting out all this beautiful content, but we weren't measuring it. So when I was there, I pioneered the first social media analytics process, which was basically going through every post and tagging them of like categories, like, okay, this was about food or this was UGC content or, you know, whatever it may be. And then measuring against the different categories of like, what are people liking? And we found that at the time, it's probably changed. I haven't been there in a few years, but when I was there, what people liked the most was seeing that UGC content. And like, you would not believe how many Taco Bell tattoos I've seen in my lifetime of like people just tagging us. Like, it's crazy. I'm now convinced. I'm now convinced that like 10% of the population has Taco Bell tattoos with me on our screen. But yeah, people would post like their Taco Bell tattoo. They would post them and their friends after prom at Taco Bell, like just really fun UGC stuff. Yeah. And we found that when we posted that content performed best. And, you know, you can take whatever from that. You could say like, oh, maybe it's because people think that they have the chance to be on Taco Bell. Maybe it's because they like seeing Taco Bell very organically. But anyways, we learned that we made sure that going through our content, we weren't going to make every single post UGC. We were making sure that we had a good amount of UGC or at least a majority. And making sure that we were really spending time finding that really strong UGC because we knew that connected most with our audience.
Yeah. And I feel like UGC has like really taken off like the past like 3 or 4 years. So I feel like when you were there, like this was kind of like the beginning of like UGC, like TikTok's starting to like really get big and stuff. So I feel like is that where you measured it at then, or what were some of the measurements you took? Yeah,
the measurements, we were really focused. I mean, it depended on which channel we were looking at. I would say like engagement rate was super important to us.
For sure.
as you can imagine, like we had millions of followers. They still do have millions of followers. Yeah. And the engagements we would get from having millions of followers were kind of low. And, you know, even though you would see hundreds of comments and likes compared to millions of followers, that wasn't that much. So we wanted to make sure that we were really engaging people, because I think that's what's most important, is to make sure that the people who are at the table are engaged and they are liking it. And something, you know, that has come with TikTok and Instagram Reels and some other newer ones that I like to point out when I'm looking at content at Canva is there are those silent engagers, which I define as the people who either send to their friends or they save it for later. And as you can imagine, with all of like the tips and hacks that we have on Canva, there's a lot of people who it's just not their style to comment and say cool video, you know? Their style is to save it for later, and then they're going to use it. And that means that they find it useful and they like our content, but they're not going to outwardly comment something. So it's important to make sure that we're also measuring all the times that a piece of content is shared or it's saved, because that still means that it's relevant and that it's, you know, people are liking it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's like a super cohesive strategy that you have there. Because as you said, like if the tips and tricks are performing best, like really what matters from that is like how many times it's being sent. Are you able to see like how many times it's shared? Or
yeah, we can see shares and saves. That's what I meant,
sorry.
Depending on like what third party you're using, sometimes it categorizes it under engagement, which is still fine for us. But it's just interesting to think about like those silent engagers.
Yeah, that's really crazy.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk a little bit. We've talked about like the day-to-day, but I do also want to talk about how you got into Canva and how that role came up. Because it's interesting how you got into Taco Bell is you reached out to a former coworker. Was this a similar story to like how you got into Canva, or like how did the role with Canva come up, and what were some of the ways that you got into break into such a great company?
Similar in a way. I would say similar in the sense that you should always be connecting with people. So I've been a fan of Canva for a really, really long time. They've been in business for a little over 10 years now. I, at the time, had been using them for 9 years. So I was a big fan. I was always using them.
Early adopter.
Yeah. I know. And because I loved this brand so much, I would talk to my friends about it. I'd be like, you should use Canva. Like, I made this on Canva. And one day, one of my friends was on Instagram, and her friend was working at Canva and said, hey, we've got an open role. And so she messaged me and she said, hey, isn't this the company that like you don't shut up about? Like, you're always talking about it. And I'm like, yes, it is. Like, could you connect me with her? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So I connected with her. We chatted a bit about what it's like working there, what the culture's like, et cetera. And then she referred me to the role, and that's where it kind of becomes the same story as Taco Bell. In the beginning, it was a little different. That's why it's important to always, if you love something and you're passionate about something, you should share with people, because you never know.
You never know
who they're going to know or who they're going to run into or be able to refer you to. And I think it was really helpful as well that my friend was able to tell her friend, like, oh no, like I know firsthand she talks about this a lot, or like she really loves this brand. So it's very authentic. But yeah, overall, just always be connecting with people, always be sharing your passions and the companies that you love.
Yeah.
And even, you know, LinkedIn's such a great tool. If you have a dream company, you should be posting about them. Like when they post something, whether it be a commercial or a social post, don't be afraid to post about it and like say, oh my God, I loved this because of XYZ. Like I thought the strategy was really good, because employers take note of that.
For sure. And I like that how both of your stories on getting into like two great companies, it was never just like, oh, I saw a job on LinkedIn and like I applied. It was both times it was like a reference in a way. I feel like that's like such a powerful strategy. And like really both of us are hammering like the takeaway there is like post what you're passionate about, but also find referrals to get into these companies.
Totally. And, you know, it's as a bummer as it may be right now, just because there's so many people looking for jobs and maybe not that many jobs. Like that's kind of the game that it is now, is like making those connections and getting those referrals, because it's not very helpful just to say to someone, yeah, I applied and I got in. And like sometimes that happened to me throughout my career, but it's not very helpful, right? That's just kind of the luck of the draw at that point. So yeah, definitely hammering in that connecting with people, posting about what you're passionate about.
And is there anything else you would advise people on how to stand out at those very, very early stages of the job interview? Let's just say you get your first interview, your interview one, introductory interview, whatever. What are some of ways that you can stand out early within the interview process that you would advise people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's so hard because I feel like especially in the first round, they're interviewing so many people.
Yeah.
At Canva and at a few of my companies prior to that, I found, and I have a personal belief about this as well, there's a lot of things that can be taught, especially maybe in some more technical roles, right? Like different programs or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can be taught. And I find that the companies that have the strongest employees, when they're looking for candidates, they're looking for how you think. Because even if you don't know everything, that's fine. They can teach you, but they want to make sure that you have critical thinking, that you're always thinking through strategy, because you can't really teach someone how to think. You can teach them how to use product, but you can't tell them how to think. So that's something that, you know, being at Canva, I know that that was a big thing that they looked for. I was on the hiring side at Taco Bell as well. It really depends across companies. Like something that was really important at Taco Bell was just like passion and creativity, because like understandably, that's kind of how their company is rooted. So it's different everywhere. I would say like first step is really researching the brand and knowing the brand and being able to not know, but kind of think what they would be looking for. So the Taco Bell example, they're a really creative, passionate company. They're probably looking for that. And then step 2 is really kind of showing through your interview, not just answering questions like this, you know, having a conversation, having that rapport, and really being able to show them how you think strategically. And again, it's okay if you don't know everything. You could say like, you know, I would research XYZ, but at least they know like, oh, that's how she would go about something. Yeah. And I think that really makes someone stand out. And I think if you're interviewing way too many people, which oftentimes they have to do for roles, it makes you remember that person of like, oh, she's the strategic one, or like, I really connected with her because instead of just hearing her answers, I heard how she thinks. And that's just, to me, like a deeper layer. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. So it's kind of framing it in a way of like, oh, if you don't know the answer, it's like, oh, I don't know the answer, but this is how I would approach it. Like do research, like analysis and all that stuff. Cause that's like essentially like, that is how you think in a way. And that's what like companies like this are really looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it was round 3 or 4 of Canva. We had like a take home project where we had to then present something to a panel of people. And I remember, it was a bit intense. But I had to present like an international social strategy for a few different markets. And they weren't looking for, you know, create these beautiful posts, because they have a creative team for that. Like that's not my role. They were looking to see, okay, did she think about influencers? Did she think about paid media? Did she think about this? And I didn't have to like show a whole thing. I just had to show them that I would think about that and how I would tap in different teams at Canva to help me execute that. So again, it's just different ways of learning how you would think and how you would go through a process.
Yeah. So is your role like now at Canva as a social media manager at Canva, is it a lot of like the actual executing the task, or is it more like managing or like leading strategies and like actually executing the strategies, but you guys have teams for like the graphic design and all that stuff? Or can you kind of explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're definitely rooted in strategy in the beginning. We have different pillars, right? So on social, we support brand campaigns, which obviously comes from the brand team of like, this is how we're going to have Canva make a splash this year, and like awareness about using Canva. We have partnerships. We have product launches, which are my personal favorite. Super fun. We have evergreen content. And then we also support education. We have Canva for Education, which is just like a separate piece of Canva. So I think it's really about, you know, depending on what pillar you're in. But overall, I would say it's all rooted in strategy, because you have to know your pillar really well. Like, when I create content for Canva for Education and speaking to teachers, that's so different than the social media manager who is creating, you know, evergreen content that just scrolling through through TikTok is going to be this fun video. So definitely rooted in strategy, thinking of that strategy firsthand. From there, we really try to help the creative team as much as possible on the big idea. So for example, it would be, you know, get teachers to see how Magic Switch can be helpful for their day-to-day classroom, just like a big idea. Our creative team knows kind of where they're starting off at.
Interesting.
Sometimes we help them as well to do like a very light storyboard, because we have that expertise on social of knowing what does well, how people are commenting, how they're reacting to things. So sometimes we'll give them the big idea. We'll give them like a very light storyboard, and then our production team will go off and make the beautiful graphics, film these fun videos. A lot of our content is screen recorded because we want to show people like which buttons to press, how to make something, you know, go from this to that. So that's kind of the process there where we're with them, you know, through reviews. And then we go live, and then we work with some other members of our team to make sure that we're measuring it accordingly. Something that I really like that Canva does is we don't measure things across the board the same. So like a brand campaign won't be held to the same standards as, you know, a partnerships campaign, as an education campaign, because we're speaking to a different audience, and sometimes those audience are more niche. So what I really like is we're making sure that we know our pillars, we know the categories, and we're measuring it amongst other things or competitors with similar content.
Yeah. What I love from like this conversation, like reading between the lines, is like social media is just not like social media. There are like legit strategies, like metrics that you like track and all this. Like someone might be coming to this like, oh, like I'm going to go into social media, like just like make pretty designs and stuff, but it goes way beyond all that. And I think that's coming off in like an awesome way. It's like social media is truly strategy, analytics, like project management. It goes way beyond just posting and hoping something goes well.
Yeah, 100%. There's so much that goes into it, so much strategy. And that's why another reason I'm really happy to work at Canva is because it's the biggest social team that I've ever worked on. In the past, sometimes I've been on a social team where it's me and one other person taking care of like social strategy, influencer, paid social, organic. And it's really, it can get overwhelming. And I think it's really important that Canva sees all of these pieces that go into it, because then you can hire people who are specialized in it. And then you're just a stronger machine overall. When people have a focus to something, they have an expertise. And it's really provided to be super helpful in getting really, really strong content out there.
Yeah, for sure. And like, as you said earlier in the podcast, like when you get into marketing, you could be wearing 10 different hats. You could be working in social media and also like newsletter stuff, or there's just so much that comes, paid ads. There's so much that comes to marketing. And it's nice to be, I imagine, in a team that is a little bit more specialized and where people really know their stuff if they're in that role, especially at a company like Canva.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And as we wind down here, I do want to ask, so we did talk a lot that comes with social media, about strategy, analytics, all that stuff. But if someone is young in their career, they're, 20, 21, they're like, I want to get into social media. What is a skill that you think that they should start to learn around that age?
Yeah, big question. As obvious as it may sound, really use every platform and use all the features on the platform. And I know it's like, well, duh, you work in social, but me and some other, people I've worked with in the past, and even my friends, when we use social media personally for our own brands, we're only using the channels that we like. We're only using the features that matter to us.
Yep.
And it's so important. I tell people, either you can do it with your own account, or you can even make a burner account just to like test things.
Yeah.
But it's so important to be able on every single channel, test all of the different features that they have, because you might be hired at a company whose style is so different than yours personally. And maybe they do like to make, videos with lots of transitions. And you're like, wait, I never make those. I make sit down videos, so it's really important to learn all of that. And then, going off of that, it's really important to also learn the paid side. Even if you're interviewing or looking for organic roles, it's always so important, as much as you can, to at least have a basic understanding of those roles and those teams that you're going to be working with on an everyday basis. Yeah. You don't have to be a pro in paid social. You don't have to know everything, but it is really helpful to at least know how it works, to put money behind something, to boost something, to create a paid campaign. Because, when you ask someone to do something, you now have this understanding of how long it takes or the information that's needed to do that. And I found in my career, sometimes when teams are running into issues with each other, it's almost always because they don't understand how each other's processes work. They don't understand, well, why can't you just do this in 2 days instead of one whole week? So I think it's really important when you're working in social to have at least a basic understanding of what the creative team does, what the influencer team does, what paid social team does, because then you're just going to be a more collaborative partner to all of them because you have that understanding.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with that as well, because once you start knowing like all these different channels, one, you get to like learn what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then once you decide what you want to do after like a few years in the industry, if you're 21, if you're, whatever, like 5-6 years in the industry, then you can start to really get deep on what you want to do and be a specialist, and be the know-it-all person when it comes to a certain area of like social media or anything with marketing, really.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I was so grateful in my first job being at Taco Bell, and why I encourage people to, if you can, work for a company that's is either really big and you can touch a lot of different things, or a company, it doesn't have to be big, but are they going to be flexible enough to let you collaborate with different teams or let you explore different areas? Because you are really early on in your career. And I think it's very unfair to expect 2021, 22 to know like, oh, this is the niche I want to continue for the next 30 years. So if you can, look for a company that will allow that flexibility or has that flexibility to let you explore.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. When you're young in your career, I'm 24, so like I'm still like young in my career, but like being able to like see like different areas of like sales, marketing, like project management is like super valuable for me, because like I don't know, like 2 years ago, like I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I got a sales role, but now that I've like been like working full time for like 2 or 3 years, you start to definitely understand like, oh, this is what I like to do. This is what I'm actually good at. And then it's starting to get a little bit deeper every year with that.
Yeah. And, I'm like 10 years into my career now, and there's still teams that I learn new things every day. I'm like, I didn't know what that team did, or I didn't know that they touched XYZ. I thought it was just this. And it helps you understand, it helps you be more collaborative. It helps you maybe explore, because it's never too late to explore a different role. But I also think that it's helpful to kind of brainstorm new ideas of working with people. You're like, oh, wow, I never knew that this team did this. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to collaborate. So it's always good to be, learning and exploring different teams, even if you are happy in your own role.
Yes. Exactly. And we will wind down with that. Lauren, this was an awesome podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we do leave, though, please tell us where people can connect with you and learn a little bit more about you and some of the career services you offer.
Yeah, absolutely. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn 24/7. I always respond to my messages. And I do offer career coaching services. So everything from resume design, helping you revamp your resume, to interview coaching, everything in between. I really love what I do. I really enjoy that. If I wasn't doing my full-time job at Canva, that's what I would be doing. And yeah, you can find me there. And I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I hope you found something valuable from this, and never hesitate to reach out if you have more questions about Canva or social media management.
You're the best, Lauren. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.